Hey everybody, Derek here to bring another video for The Walking Dead Season 6. And what this video is going to be doing is doing a prediction video on whether Glenn will live or die in Season 6. This is going to be based off of some of the story from the comics and from the episodes First Time Again, JSS, and Thank You, the first 3 episodes that we have seen. If you are not caught up with The Walking Dead, and you do not want to be spoiled in any way, do not watch this video because otherwise you will be spoiled. I suggest you watch the latest episode and then come back. Okay, so of course what this video is really going to be doing is analyzing as a result of the episode Thank You, with Glenn falling into that herd of walkers, whether he's alive or whether he's dead. And evidence that I have to pretty much either make you believe that it is possible or that maybe he is alive. So, to start off, let me talk about what happened briefly. In this episode, the group was being pursued by a large herd of walkers. They come into this town, and Glenn and Nicholas both had the idea of setting a feed store on fire so that way it would distract the walkers. Well, the herd ends up coming too early, and as a result, Glenn and Nicholas get trapped in this alley. There's a big fence, there's a dumpster, there's garbage bags, debris. No way out, because if they would jump over the fence, there would still be walkers anyways. So they make a last stand, they get on top of the dumpster, they're completely surrounded, and Nicholas decides that, all is lost. I think he felt like in that moment there was no hope. He kills himself by shooting himself in the head, and when he does that, his body falls into Glenn. They both fall into the walker pit, and it appears that Glenn and Nicholas are eaten. Now, you can look at that either way. A lot of the evidence seems to point to, yeah, that may have been Glenn dying. But there's also evidence that he may still be alive. The one rule of television I always like to say is, and what is really acceptable, is that if you don't see the body, don't make an assumption, because there's a possibility this person could still come back and be alive later. We've seen that in various different other television shows. And Scott Gimple has confirmed we're going to see Glenn again, but we don't know what the capacity is. So it may be he's alive, it may be that he's a walker, or it might just be a hand and we see the pocket watch or something, So one way or the other, we're going to find out. But what is his fate? Well, I'm going to analyze that a little bit. I'm going to start off with reasons why I think that he's dead and go to reasons why I think he's still alive. We're going to end optimistic in this video. So let me start off with reasons why I think Glenn may be dead. One of those reasons is because of what he said to Rick over the walkie-talkie, which was, hey, D-U-M-B-A-S-S, pardon me. He basically calls him that word, which if you remember back in the pilot, Days Gone By, when Rick got trapped in the tank, Glenn said over the radio, hey, dummy, pardon, you in the tank, are you cozy in there? And in this one, he tells Rick, good luck, dummy. He uses the same language, which is very symbolic for the two of them. That was the first thing that Glenn said to Rick. And it may be the last thing that he ever says to Rick, too. I mean, sometimes you see those various different quotes that characters use that can be significant for them, that when you hear it, that means that something might be coming. Now, we've also seen that these quotes are used between other characters, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're dead. Rick does the whole, I ask, you answer, it's common courtesy, referencing the pilot again. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the person saying it is going to die, but because of the circumstances, and just because of, what happened in this episode, I mean, Glenn gets trapped, may have died, and we now see that Rick is trapped again in the RV, which, again, could be symbolic of that whole entire situation. So there was a lot of symbolism there from the pilot. Another thing is also because of David's comments. If you remember, David was the member of Alexandria that was bit by that walker, and he ends up getting eaten when he can't make it over that big gate that Michonne, Heath, and Scott made it over, and he gets eaten. You know, David making references to about how he has a wife back in the community and that he really wishes that he could see her, and, you know, he may not get that chance. You know, that may not have just been meant for him. It might have also been meant for Glenn as well. You know, you see sometimes characters making comparisons in their own lives, but the lesson can be learned or be impressioned upon on another character. So somebody might say something like, man, you know, I love my mom or dad or my brother or somebody so much and I would do anything for them. And maybe there's another character who's like, yeah, you know, I don't really care. And then maybe in their family, in that person's family, somebody in that capacity dies, and it really is an impression, it leaves an impression on them, and it's like a lesson that can be learned. And it could be seen as the same way here, you know, where David's comments also mean the same thing for, you know, for Maggie back at home. You know, Maggie's going to find out that Glenn didn't come back, and what is she going to do? What is she going to say? Is she going to go out and look for him? Is she going to accept that maybe he is dead and just cry? What is she going to do? That's something that I think could come back around and could be significant with Glenn's death. Another thing is you also have to look at the circumstances from the comic books. And I'm going to tell you Glenn's fate in the comic books right now, what he is doing now. So if you don't want to know anything about that either, you might want to stop the video now as well, because I'm going to spoil some comic stuff which you may be reading at this time. So another spoiler warning, I'm about to tell Glenn's story in the comics. So if you don't want to know, exit now. Okay. So in the comics, Glenn is dead. No doubt about it. And what ends up happening to him is that in the comics, he meets up with this villain, the group does, named Negan, who is the leader of a group called the Saviors. And what ends up happening is you know, the group was fighting the Saviors because the Savior is a group that goes around and bullies people into giving them supplies or else they're going to do harm to them. And Rick's group had been fighting back. And Negan ends up showing up with like 50 or more people. I mean, Rick and the small group he's with are clearly outnumbered. And Negan decides to kill one of them in order to set an example, and he chooses Glenn. And Glenn just suffers a very terrible death in the comics. A lot of things were going on at that point. You know, one was that Maggie was pregnant, and Glenn never gets to meet his child in the comics because, of course, he passes away. And what ends up happening is, you know, Maggie eventually does give birth to a son, which she names Herschel after her father. And you know, what's significant is that there's a little bit of evidence that Maggie may be pregnant on the show right now. If you remember back to First Time Again, Glenn tells Maggie that she should stay behind because Deanna was still in a terrible state after losing Reg. And Maggie goes, okay, I will, but that's not the only reason, right? And Glenn goes, no, it's not. I'm assuming that Maggie's pregnant. You know, I think that's a very significant story in the comics that cannot be skipped. And I think it's very true that that is what's happening right now. I mean, stories change, you know, in the timeline of the Walking Dead TV show and comics all the time. Maggie gets pregnant a little bit later in the comics, but it could easily fit at this point right now. So the fact that all of these things are falling into place may indicate that Glenn really is dead and they're following through with things in the comics. Now, one thing that I do kind of feel, this is like my in-between, you know, where it's kind of good, but it's kind of bad, you know, like evidence of why he might be dead, but why he might be alive, is to always ask yourself, why did this character get killed off? Because every character death serves a purpose for the show, either for the concept of surviving in the apocalypse, you know, hey, you shouldn't do this or else you might die, or it teaches people a lesson about maybe a different way of surviving. You know, you have Herschel, Tyrese, people like that that have good moral compasses that draw a line and say, I will not do X, Y, and Z in order to survive. I won't kill people to survive. I don't like killing every walker I see, so I'm not going to do that. But as a result, you might die. On the other hand, you have the circumstances of, hey, listen, don't go running down the street when there's a big herd of walkers coming, or you're going to die. So you sometimes have lessons like that. Well, with Glenn, I kind of feel a little let down. If that really is his death in the TV show, it kind of feels, a lot like Beth's death did. I felt like Beth, when she died, there was no purpose behind it. It was totally just a wasted opportunity that they could have done something better with the character, or at least could have given her a little bit more of a better send-out. I thought the way she died was pathetic. It didn't need to happen. And the same thing here, Glenn has been a character on the show since season 1. If he has to die, he deserves something like a Negan killing him send-off. If you're going to kill a character, you really want to make sure that, the death signifies either the way they've lived, or honors them, or in a sense pushes the characters in the story to either change their behavior, or, in the case of the comics, fight the saviors. Well, here, what's the lesson? Well, don't help people because otherwise it's going to come back and bite you. Ha ha, joke's on you. I don't like that. I don't like that lesson that Walking Dead may be trying to, deliver through Glenn's death. Because if we're understanding the story here, Glenn, as a character, has always helped people. That is a trait for him that no other character can compare to. Because Glenn would go the lengths to save your life. He saved Rick when the odds were against him. He stood up against Merle when Merle was torturing him in season 3. He saved Tara. Tara was with the governor's group. He could have easily killed her through guilt by association. You killed my father-in-law. Bam. That's what you deserve. But he didn't. He saved her, and he helped redeem Tara. With Noah, he tried everything that he could to make sure that Noah did not die. And then you get to Nicholas, who, tries to kill him numerous times. Once directly in the season finale of season 5. And he gives this guy a chance, and what does it do? Comes back and bites him. Because Nicholas shoots himself and falls into Glenn. So it's almost like saying, well, Glenn, if you would have pulled the trigger and, killed Nicholas, you might be alive. Maybe he would be. But I don't like the lesson that delivers. I think there's more to Glenn. And I think that is something that should inspire people, not something that should be looked down upon. You should want to help people in the zombie apocalypse. And I hate that if he really did die in that episode, that's literally what the message is. Don't help people. And Rick's group is never going to know that, or they're going to accept that and go, yeah, you see these Alexandria people over here? Well, if we help them, we're screwed. I don't like that lesson. So I'm really hoping that Glenn is alive so that he can serve a little bit of a better purpose. And here's some reasons why I think he is alive. One, there is room under that dumpster. If you look here, there is enough space to crawl underneath that dumpster and survive. You see in the situation here, there is enough room. When his body falls, he is relatively close to the space that he could crawl under. And if you look carefully, in one scene we see him there, and then the next scene we don't. Now, that could be because the walkers, crowded in a little bit more. They might have also just removed the props. They may have had props for Glenn's body, props for Nicholas's body, and they may have just removed them because nobody was really going to be paying attention anyways. But I don't see the body, which may indicate he did really crawl under. And again, when you look at the circumstances, it really does look like Nicholas's body is the one that's being eaten. It did fall directly on top of Glenn. And the thing is, if walkers are eating that and blood is spewing everywhere, that makes sense. If they were eating Glenn, I really don't think he would have been screaming. I think that really we would have seen blood coming out of his mouth. We would have seen, more than just him, screaming and, moving around on the ground. So that in itself, I think, gives me hope Another thing, people might be wondering, well, how in the world is he even going to survive? Does it go beyond the realms of possibility? I submit no. Here's why. So, if you go back to Season 2, What Lies Ahead, the Season 2 premiere, the group hid underneath cars in order to avoid a walker herd that was going by. So, we've always wondered, can walkers really smell people? What kind of senses do they have? Well, I don't think they have perfect senses. I think that they can, in a sense, sense where things are. Maybe they get a scent of something that's alive and go, it's somewhere around here. Maybe as you get closer and closer, maybe it does get a little bit stronger, but you can't pinpoint, oh, there it is. Yeah, there it is. I see it. I don't think that walkers have the ability to do that, because the walkers clearly walked right past the group members. The other thing is that even though there's going to be fresh blood and everything all over the place because of Nicholas's body, I don't think that the walkers are smart enough to realize how many people are there. I think that one of the things that they focus a lot more on is noise. So if you are making noise, if you are shooting a gun, if you're screaming, they're going to know something else is going on here. There's something else in the vicinity. But if Glenn keeps quiet, and he just suddenly goes quiet and crawls under the dumpster, I think the walkers are just going to think, oh, well, we ate everything. There's just a little, piece of shirt here, and yeah, there's going to be a pool of blood. But that they're not going to be smart enough to go, oh, there's somebody else around here, and we're going to find them. I think that they're just going to eat the body of Nicholas when they don't hear or see anything. Eventually, they're going to start to, walk away. They may hang around the area for a little bit because they can still smell the scent, but I think that after a while they kind of realize, let's just move on. We're not seeing anything here. And I think it's very possible. And again, you had that scene in the premiere where T-Dog cuts his arm very badly on a piece of like the car, and what ends up happening is Daryl covers him with a dead body, and T-Dog was clearly spurting blood on the pavement, but the walkers kept moving, so their ability to really sense what's around them is questionable. So even though there would be a lot of blood in the area, they may still keep going. So I think it's very plausible that here, if Glenn just stops screaming, realizes, okay, I'm going to crawl under the dumpster, and he crawls under there, then the walkers are going to be like, oh, well, I don't hear anything. Nothing's on the ground, moving their hands around or nothing. We may still smell things, but I'm not sensing anything. So let's hang around. Maybe something will come by. The walkers are thinking this. But after a while, if Glenn just stays quiet and doesn't make a noise, I think they're eventually going to leave. I really think that, this is very plausible, that he can survive this. Another thing with the comics that really makes me think they're going to change it up a little bit is that in the comic books, around this time period, there is a walker herd that attacks Alexandria. The walker herd, ends up making its way towards them, and the walls do come down, and they do attack the community. And here, we've seen that the truck slammed into the food truck in JSS slammed into the wall. It's very possible that the walkers can push that down and invade, and I think they're going to do that. I think that's definitely a story that's going to happen. In the comics at this time, Glenn, Heath, and Spencer actually rigged this rope, crawl to crawl across from one building to another to see if Andrea is okay, because Andrea was in the guard tower. And while nothing really significant happens there, Glenn is outside of the community when the walkers attack. And I would have no doubt they may put a little twist on that, and that when the walkers do attack, all may seem hopeless, and then Glenn comes back, and this may be when they reintroduce Glenn, that Glenn comes back with some kind of a mechanism to either kill a bunch of walkers or lead them away. Like he may drive a vehicle over there, honk the horn, and get the walkers out of there. So he may end up being the hero in all of this because he got left behind, and because he survived, that he's the one that saves them. Because in the comics, he's outside of the community when this happens. I think they might put a twist on that, and he may end up being the hero that saves everybody as a result of his circumstances. So I think there are a lot of possibilities here, but I'm going to hold out hope for Glenn. I don't think he died. I think he can survive this. I think he will survive this. And I think that he's going to be on the show for a while longer. I hope he is. I like his character. I think he's amazing. And I just think that based on the circumstances, he's alive. So that's what I'm going to conclude with. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think he's alive? Do you think he died? Let me know what you think. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you for watching.